Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Serving on Groups That Make Decisions, Part 1, Opportunities to Get Involved, and also Part 2, Types of Groups. My name is Jan Sarek, and I'm the founder and former CEO of Wisconsin Facets, now retired. And I'm also the director of Sarek Consulting Services, where I work with nonprofit agencies to provide training for boards of directors and other people, and then also interim agency management and other services. I'm the parent of 2 adult sons, one of whom has autism, and that's how I got into all of this to begin with. So your handouts include a copy of all of the slides that you're going to see today. Here's the agenda for today's webinar. I want to make sure that everybody is familiar with the Serving on Groups Guidebook resource and the contents of the book. So there's 8 sections in the Serving on Groups Guidebook, and today we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, sections 1 and 2, and then we'll end each webinar with some additional resources. So first I want everybody to take a moment to think about, what brings you here today? Is it about school or family or other types of leadership? I'm going to do a very quick poll of you, if you could, and this is just for what's your experience with serving on decision-making groups? Either you've never served one, you've served on one before, you're thinking about joining one, or you're serving on some now. If you're serving on some now, you could type them into the chat box and I'll share them out with everybody. So I'm going to just give you a couple seconds to answer the question. All right, and I'm going to close this out and then share it out with you. So it looks like 33% of you have never served on one. A third of you have served on one before, and a third of you are serving on one now. So very cool. So I'm going to hide that so you can't see it. So first of all, for those of you who may not know, I want to just tell you a little bit about the Serving on Groups publication. It was developed in response to an identified need that Wisconsin Facets found that it isn't enough just to invite parents to join decision-making groups, but that they might need some empowerment or information and support in order to be really effective participants in the groups. And we hope that the information in this resource provides that for parents and really others. The research and review of this Serving on Groups publication was the result of our work with a large group of stakeholders from across Wisconsin that included parents and educators, state agencies, and others. And while Serving on Groups was developed initially to support families in serving on decision-making groups, the information and the structure of this resource really is intended to support anybody that's serving on those groups or thinking about serving in a group. The information not only applies to decision-making groups that are education related, like maybe IEP teams or school boards or serving on the school PTO or like the superintendent's advisory group, but it also applies to all decision-making groups like county boards or church boards, or if you're serving on your class reunion planning group or something like that. So just it's very broad. Also, the information isn't specific just to Wisconsin, but really can be applied nationally. So Wisconsin Facets developed the Serving on Groups Guidebook with funding from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and also from the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Ed Programs. So you're going to hear me refer to the resource as the guidebook for short, and there's something for everybody in the guidebook. It's a great introduction for some. It's a welcome refresher for others. And it's just, in general, a good resource for anyone, including people who are experts and just newbies, so that everybody can come to the table ready to serve. All of the Serving on Group Guidebook pages and many resources can be downloaded free from the Serving on Groups website, so you can see that on your screen. And then the link is on there on the slide, so you can just check into that after this presentation so that you see what's on there. Also, I just wanted to point out that there's a new, not a new, but an updated online learning platform on that site. So you can actually access these modules on your own 24/7, and it's a good place to go, for a refresher, or just if you want to, learn about serving on groups right on that site. Um, and then you can also order hard copies from that site. So serving on groups, as I said, it has a hard copy guidebook, and the link on the slide is where you download it for free. It's free if you download it online, and it has 8 sections that eventually we're going to go through in this series, this fall series, but it also has activities and resources that are part of this resource. So your handouts for today include section 1 and 2 of the guidebook, and this is just a sample page from the guidebook, and I just want to kind of point out the different sections. Many of the pages have a focus question and an objective listed under the heading. There's an informative reading on each topic. There's real-life examples, often with the heading of Families Ask Questions. There's facts to consider that are bolded, and there's additional resources for you to consider that are linked for you to check out. All of the words that are bolded and italicized are found in the glossary in the appendix of the guidebook. And it's just important to use this book in a way that's going to be most meaningful for you, and if you share it with the group that you're on, for your group as well. And if you need to use just one piece of it, just use that piece. If you want to take the book as a whole curriculum, that works too. And the intention of the guidebook is just to meet your needs and to have you use it however is helpful to you. So a lot of our Serving on Groups information is research-based, and much of it highlights research from the work of a woman called Dr. Joyce Epstein. And she and others have focused on the effects of family involvement and have come up with keys for successful school, family, and community partnerships. The research has found that children have better outcomes when families are involved, and that there needs to be support for families in decision-making groups. And if you want to see more about Dr. Joyce Epstein and her research, just do a Google search for her name, and you can see her name right at the bottom of that slide, Dr. Joyce Epstein. And there's just a ton of articles that she's published and some videos as well. So good to pursue that as a kind of a side benefit. Involving families in decision-making activities has benefits for families as well as professionals. And some of the benefits you might see as a parent are an awareness of input and of just a general awareness, and then input on policies, a feeling of ownership, shared experiences and connections with professionals and other families as well. For professionals, you're getting the benefit of seeing from the family's point of view something that you don't necessarily always have access to. Increased confidence and ability to partner with families, and then learning to accept family representatives in leadership roles. We're striving to have family leadership in schools be a natural and expected part of day-to-day operations in a school. Those of you that are familiar with the disability rights movement have probably heard the phrase, nothing about us without us. So having your voice heard, especially when it comes to a parent and when decisions are about policies that are going to affect you and your children, it's just really important to be part of the decision-making process. So let's get into section 1, which is titled Opportunities to Get Involved. And you can turn to your guidebook handout, which is one of the handouts for today, pages for section 1. If you look at the top boxes in orange of the pages of this section, you can see that the same 4 questions that are on the slide that we're going to cover. So how do I get involved? How can I share in decision making? Who can serve on these groups? Where do I start? And by the end of this section, you'll have a chance to really learn about a self-reflection tool to identify your experiences and your knowledge and your skills and interests as an individual as well as a member of a group. So you'll also be able to become aware of the possibilities to use your experiences and knowledge and skills and interests as a group member or leader, and then also learn about decision-making opportunities to explore that are going to match your time and energy available and your kind of really current activities and interests. One of your handouts for this training is called the MAP activity. It's at the top. And when you're asking yourself how and where or what kinds of groups in which you maybe might get involved, we suggest that you use this MAPS, I can't talk, MAPS activity. And MAPS stands for Making Action Plans. And this is a planning process that teams can use for a person-centered approach to help somebody plan for his future. So not only just you planning for how you want to get involved in a group, a lot of times this process is used for planning for kids with disabilities in terms of what do they want to do next and with their future. So these types of plans tend to be positive and forward-thinking, personalized, for the person, and creative. And the MAPS process fosters the development of self-advocacy skills amongst individuals and really helps to establish trust and a sense of empowerment and shared responsibilities amongst members of a team. So this is a great process for you to use for self-reflection. When you're done, you'll have information about yourself that you can use to identify your interests and needs as you think about becoming part of a group. So you can also bring this MAPS process tool to use with a group that you serve on so that all of the members could go through it and discuss it together. So it's kind of a cool process. These are the 5 steps to a MAP that are shown on the slide, and we're going to cover each one of the steps now. So if you have your handout, you can follow along. So as we go through these steps, just consider taking notes yourself for your future reference. You can always work to totally complete your MAPs after this training. So the first step is to say, who am I? And this part is a description of yourself, including your strengths, skills, likes, interests, things that you could draw on to support your role as a leader of a group or a group member. So think about what words best describe you. So like, are you a parent? Are you a passionate advocate for kids with disabilities? Are you a teacher? Do you love teaching kids? Those kind of things. And then what skills, gifts, and talents will support your journey as a leader and or a team member. So for me, I was thinking about this the other day, and so for me, like, I'm pretty calm. Well, I don't know if you ask my husband that, I'd be calm all the time, but so in general, pretty calm, pretty organized. I have a university degree in mediation. I am an experienced member of lots of local, state, and national committees and boards and policymaking groups. I'm honest, confident, caring, supportive. So, do that. You could just think about what all things can you bring to a group. And then number 3 is, what other skills and talent will you need to be better in your role as a group member? Now, for me, patience is number 1. I always have to put a muzzle on so that I take time to listen and be patient with the group process. So I need to learn more about how to be a very patient group member. Number 4 is, what do you like or dislike about your current role involving leadership and advocacy? So for me, I like the ability to make sure that the parent voice is heard, especially the voice of a parent of an adult with autism, in my case right now. So I'm trying to use that in my advocacy and in my leadership right now, since my son with autism is an adult. So number 5 is, what values and beliefs guide your life and work as a person and a leader? So honesty, for me, it's honesty and making sure there's equal rights, knowing that change can't happen unless people are willing to step up and speak out. So those are kind of things that really guide me right now. So think about, those 5 things about describing yourself and write them down, because I think we always don't give ourselves credit or think about ourselves in that way. So the next one is history. So think about your history, and this isn't meant to be like a chronological account, but more like highlights of that stick out in your mind related to how you got to where you are today. So, what in your life led you to be here today, to be part of this group or to be part of this training? So, for example, at Wisconsin Facets, the majority of the staff and board are parents or family members of children with disabilities, or they have disabilities themselves, which led them to the work or serve in the field of disability. I mean, that's how I started Wisconsin Facets, was because of my son with autism and knowing that parents need support, and as teachers do as well, with the special ed laws and process and all that sort of thing. Um, a similar life experience might lead you to join a particular group. So just think about what's significant about your personal history, what's significant about your family or your children's history. What were your first experiences in, where you saw yourself either as a leader or needing to step up and take a leadership role in a group? What adult experiences or formal or informal training has helped you see yourself as a member of a group or team? I mean, I think this is important to think through. Some people just hop on a group and they don't really know why they're there, or what's important to them. I had some experience, leadership experience, back in college when I was on the student senate and board of my sorority. But my son with autism was really the reason, like I said, for my over 45-year involvement with groups supporting kids and people with disabilities. So I started by advocating for him as part of his IEP team. So that's definitely an important decision-making group. So a lot of you who have kids with disabilities, that's kind of where you've started with serving on a decision-making group. So then it broadened out for myself with advocacy for other kids with disabilities. And I had some great board training because I didn't know necessarily how to serve on a board effectively when I was on the Autism Society of America board. And I learned a lot about board service and how to represent other, the ideas of not only myself, but other parents as well. So the third step is to think about your dreams. So what dreams do you have in relation to your personal and professional development as a group or a team member? So what dreams or visions do you have about things you'd like to to see happening as a result of your participation in a decision-making group? I mean, dream big. Dreams don't have to be realistic. I mean, you can think about what contributions or changes you dream about that will happen as a result of your involvement on a decision-making team. What's one thing that you most want to have happen? What do you hope to accomplish in a year or 5 years or 10 years? What other dreams are important to you as you start your journey? So it's really important when you're defining your expectations for serving on a group to define what do you want to accomplish. I mean, don't get on a group if you have no idea kind of what things you'd like to accomplish while you're on that group. So if your goal is to change a law that affects your child, joining a group that doesn't really have engage in any type of legislative lobbying, that might not help you achieve your dreams. I mean, this isn't just defining your goals and your plans for the future, but it's also helping you align with a group or groups in which you're considering a membership and a leadership role. So align your goals with, what is the function of the group that you're thinking about joining on. So the purpose of this step is to imagine how the group might enhance your advocacy and your leadership by joining a group. And one goal of this activity is just to help you value the many ways in which you might lead and influence others. So for me, I most recently served on a board called the National Parent Leadership Advocacy and Community Empowerment Group, and it's called National PLACE, PLACE for short. And this is a national organization that I helped start a number of years ago, and it's dedicated to really empowering families and family-led organizations to advocate for really enhanced, meaningful parent involvement and leadership in all national and state policy making that happens and impacts services for kids and families. And my dream in getting this group started was to be able to impact several federal laws by lobbying to make sure that there's a strong parent and family component in decision making. And this group has already impacted federal legislation and grant proposals to make sure that families were included as decision makers. I mean, it's really cool to see some of the things that are coming out of National Place now. And National Place is now being invited to meet with leaders of the U.S. Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So before they write some grant proposals, now they're saying, well, National Place, what do you think? What should be in this grant? I mean, do we have to include families in this? So it's kind of cool. And we're also poised to be invited and to work on IDEA when it's scheduled to be reauthorized in a few years. So it's getting in the right place at the right time and being able to impact legislation. So step 4 is fears and concerns. Once you've identified your dreams, it's important to think about what might stand in your way of accomplishing those dreams. So this is time to face your fears. And by identifying your worries or concerns about becoming part of a decision-making group, you might find ways to overcome some of your challenges. So think about what concerns arise when you think about yourself as a leader or a member of a team, and about your role on the team, and what are the barriers that might stand in the way of realizing your leadership and your participation dreams. So I don't know, are you terrified of public speaking? I was. It was really hard. The first time I spoke out was when I was at my school, my local school district, and I was speaking out about 4K and including kids with disabilities in programming. So I mean, and that was one of the first times I ever spoke publicly related to my son with autism, and I was panic stricken that I had to talk in front of the school board. So are you worried that you might not have time or energy to really participate in a group as much as you would want? So just think about things that might get in the way of being an effective group member. So for example, I mean, parents might, for example, be concerned about, being on the group, about revealing too much about their family in the group. They might be worried about the costs, like the mileage to get to a meeting, or lost wages, or babysitting costs, and time involved in participating, involved in those groups. They might be worried about the possibility that their advocacy work might result in kind of unintended negative consequences for their own child. So it's just important to kind of think about that and write it down, and then think about whether that's something that would stop you from serving on a group, or whether you have to, ask if your babysitting costs could be covered, maybe, in order to serve on the group. So the 5th step is needs. And so for this one, you just have to think about the responses that you had for the other 4 things and some of the ideas that you had. And based on those responses, what needs can you identify? Like, what needs to happen in order to help make your dreams for the future come true related to your role as a leader or a member of a decision-making group? So what else do you need to expand your role as a leader? What supports do you need from others? So maybe, like I said, maybe it's something like childcare or transportation that would be the answer to get your needs met. Those are kind of technical challenges. Or it might be an adaptive thing. So maybe you need to work on overcoming issues about being shy in groups, like I was to begin with. So just have a brainstorming session either with yourself or maybe with others that you care about, or people from the group, to think about what do you need to have to move forward. You can use the answers on your map, step 5 questions, to develop an action plan related to what you need to be an effective group member. If you do this exercise with your whole group and follow it with a brainstorming session, then you can sort of all collectively think about what you need as a group to move your group forward so that everybody's going to be effective. So there's a number of ways to use this information. I just want to mention a little bit about shared decision making. It's a kind of a buzzword that you see thrown around. And you can see the credit on this sentence here goes to Dr. Joyce Epstein. She's quoted as saying, decision making means a process of partnering, of shared views and actions toward shared goals, not just a power struggle between conflicting ideas. And the Serving on Groups guidebook is really built on the idea of shared decision making. So shared decision making is really just a way to explain the process that a group uses to, that goes through to make decisions that involve hearing multiple perspectives. It's not just about one person. It's about the entire group coming together for a common focus. And when members of a group have an increased sense of ownership in the work of the group, the result is greater commitment of time and energy to the work of the group. So other descriptions of shared decision making you'll find on page 2 of your guidebook. So long story short, buy-in is everything. By seeking out multiple perspectives and incorporating them into the decision-making process, the whole group is going to be more committed to achieving the things that they're working on. So who can serve on a decision-making group? Bottom line, anybody who's interested. So it's important for families to be part of a decision-making group, especially if the group's decision will be affecting them personally or their child or family, directly somehow. And there's lots of opportunities to serve on groups, but it's important to I think your time is valuable. So you want to find an opportunity that to serve on a group that is meaningful to you, and to make sure that your time is productive, you really have to carefully consider your options before agreeing to serve. So you want to consider the amount of time you have available, and then the energy it's going to take to actually fulfill the responsibilities of the role. I mean, you don't just get on a group and do nothing and just sit there. You really have to, be an active member. And so just be sure that before you commit to joining a decision-making group or serving on a board of directors, that you're really fully aware of the time and energy requirements of the group. Have you been asked to serve on a board or committee, for example, that meets 4 times a year? Or is this something that's going to require a weekly or even a daily commitment? I'm going to ask another question here, and this is really one that if you think about a group you're serving on now or previously served on, was the amount of time you spent on the group a lot, very little, or just right? And you can also add that you didn't serve on a decision-making group. I mean, so the third choice is the fourth choice is I didn't serve on one yet. So, okay, looks like most everybody responded. Okay, so I'm going to close this and share it out with you. And it looks like a third of you said it was a big commitment. A third of you said you didn't serve on a group yet. And then the rest of you said is either very little or just right. So it's really important to know, I mean, especially those of you that answered a lot, that when you're getting onto a group that you're well aware of the commitment that you're going to make. And I think it's important. I mean, it's important to have your voice there, but it's also important for you to be effective and have the time to do it. Okay, so and then the other thing so that was time, and so then the next question is for the group that you're serving on or served on. Oops. Okay, hang on. Let me hide that. I think I'm doing this okay. All right. I'm sorry. Here we go. Okay, so this is the second question is, was the amount of energy? So the first one was time. This one is energy. Was the amount of energy a lot, very little, or just right, or you haven't served on a group yet? Okay, almost all of you have voted. All right, I'm going to close this out and share it out with you. And look, almost half of you said the group that you served on, 43% said it took a lot of energy, and then 30% said it's just right. So none of you said it took very little energy. So I think that that's important to know. Okay. So one of your handouts for this training is an example of a real life, like a time and energy inventory. And this is a great tool for you to use when you're deciding if you have enough time and energy to serve. So, you can see things on this list like, how much time do you spend taking care of the family and housework and cooking and shopping and, time for just you, like exercising and sleeping. I always think that's a funny one because I think, okay, or actually, I should say, now that I'm retired, I am getting a little bit more time to sleep, unless it's a day that my son with autism decides he's going to be up all night. But other things like driving or volunteering, and then how many hours do you have left? So you're going to ask yourself two questions. Do I have time in my schedule to commit to serving on a decision-making group? And then the second question is, what has to change for you to be able to participate? So, you first figure out the percentage of time that you're spending on all of those activities, and then you see what time might be available for you to devote to serving on a group so that you can make a good decision about whether you want to do that. So, where to begin when you want to take part in a group that makes decisions. So here's some ideas to get you started. So first, you want to learn about the resources and services that are available. You can look on the website at your local community center, school, or library. You can check with a state or national organization or with a cooperative extension office just to see kind of what's available from your school, and your county board or your city board, and your library board. So just find out kind of what's available. And I say look on the website because you'll find a lot of information about some of the groups that, oversee all of these things and maybe what is involved. If you're associated with a disability group, like maybe the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin, there's usually local, state, and national groups to serve on related to a particular disability that you have interest in. Or if it's a educators group, they have local educators groups, state ones, national ones, and depending on how you want to get involved. Find an issue that you care deeply about. It requires passion on your part to devote time from your schedule to an issue. So connect to a group with the authority to create or influence change. This is the surest way of knowing that you're going to make a difference for the most number of people. And then prepare yourself to serve. This means making sure your time is productive by considering the amount of time that you have available. And then, again, if you really have the energy at this time that's going to take to fulfill the responsibilities of the role. So there's some resources related to what we've discussed in this section 1. A few that I especially like, the Center for Parent Information and Resources, Family Engagement Resources. There's a bunch of them on there. And I mentioned National Place. This is a really good website, not only to find out about what National Place is and does, but also to see some of the resources that are available. So definitely encourage you to, because you have the handouts, so you have the copy of these links and all that stuff. So definitely look them up. Here's some more resources. I know there's a lot here, so sorry about that. But a few that I especially like on here is the one that's called Team Engagement for Quality Improvement, and that's through the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Also, the U.S. Department of Ed Family, School, and Community Engagement newsletter. On this site that's on there, you can sign up for a variety of newsletters related to education, one of which is the monthly Family, School, and Community e-newsletter. And there's also one that's from the OSEP, Office of Special Ed Programs, that's related to special ed updates. Very, interesting. The last one, Making the Match, Getting Started in Board Service. It's a short video, but again, can be really helpful. So next we're going to move on to section 2, which talks about the many different kinds of groups. And so one of your handouts is section 2 from your guidebook it has this stuff in it. So the questions that, hang on one second. Before I go on, I'm going to read a comment. So it says, for me, when expectations of time weren't clear at the start, then it always felt like too much. When time expectations were made clear at the start and were accurate, it felt like a manageable amount of time, probably because I knew what to expect going into it. And I think that's from Danielle, and I think that is really right on point. It's like before you join a group, you really got to ask and make sure, what is exactly going to be involved? How many times do you meet? What do you think? Are there going to be subgroups? Just so that you have a good idea of what's going to be manageable for you. So thanks, Danielle. That's right on point. So in this section, we're going to find out what the different functions of groups and member roles are, and what each of these groups that you see listed are specifically. So decision-making groups can really take a lot of forms, from a formal group like a state advisory committee that provides input and feedback related to statewide issues, to an informal group like an event committee for a local church or for a family engagement night at school, planning that. Decision-making groups really do important work, no matter what their structure or issue or size, and each person on the group should be prepared to fulfill their role. I mean, that preparation is really important. Decision-making groups do important work, like ad hoc groups, for example, form for a specific reason. They're usually temporary, and hang on, my brain just went my brain just went so, oh my God. See, that's what happens when you get older. Okay, so ad hoc groups form for a specific purpose that are usually temporary. Standing committees are permanent and usually study issues and report or advise groups based on their findings. Some groups meet for years. Some groups meet for just a certain agreed upon amount of time. So these are some of the variables that I'm putting up here that differentiate groups from another. One is their decision-making authority. So is this the group that's going to make the ultimate decision, or is this just an advisory group where you make a recommendation which may or may not be followed by the group that you're advising? So, for example, the State Superintendent Special Ed Advisory Council is an advisory council. So when the group votes and on a decision, this is advisory to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. So this group doesn't make the ultimate decision, but they make a strong recommendation that hopefully the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction will take into consideration. The issues that they're working on, they might be very focused or might vary pretty widely. The meeting structure that they chose, like it could be really formal, like I mentioned, or and use Robert's Rule of Order and specific parliamentary procedures, or it could be, more informal. The kind of data they use. Is the group collecting formal data, or are they just using sort of stories and anecdotes and people's input? Are they collecting data themselves, or are they using data that's collected by other people? The input and feedback that they collect. So, find out if the group is just talking about and amongst themselves, or are they going out and surveying, others? Are they doing focus groups? The processes that they use within the group, what are they? Find out about the membership. Who are the members? How are members added to the group? Are they elected? Are they appointed? Or somehow else. What's the history of the group? That's important. What's the length of time since the group was formed? Is there a diversity of perspectives that's represented? So it's important to ask about all of these things when you're considering serving on a particular group. So I just have the link on here to watch this video clip. It's really short. It's only 30 seconds. I'm not going to show it because the audio tends to be crummy using this platform. So mainly it just talks about how member roles vary from group to group depending on the type and function of the group. So, find out before joining the group, what are the roles available? Is there a leader of the group? Is there a facilitator, a chairperson, a secretary, a treasurer, a members at large chair, a note taker? Does everybody have the same, responsibility, or are they different? So make sure that you understand what is the role that you're going to have before you agree to commit to that role. It's really important to identify what is it. So the guidebook highlights 6 kinds of types of decision-making groups. So starting with a list on page 7, and then individually describes each type of group. So this sample page from section 2 of the guidebook, there's a definition of the type of group at the top of each page. There's activities, there's examples of the group that are listed on the left side of the page. On the right side of the page, it gives the leadership roles in the group, the typical length of service, and then a scenario that's called putting it into action. So let's get into the different functions of groups. And so there's 6 different functions. Governing, governing, advisory, leadership, planning, and evaluation, and practice groups. And some groups might serve a couple of these functions. Remember, just groups can look very similar while having very different purposes. So we're going to look closely at each one of these 6 groups, okay? So the first one is mentioned in the guidebook on page 8, and this is called a governing group. And this is one of the more formal groups where members are usually appointed or elected to the position, and their purpose is to govern an organization and set policy. So they might be responsible to establish bylaws for the organization, to be the ones that communicate with the public or with funders, like if they're fundraising. They might be responsible for hiring and evaluating the executive director, for negotiating with employee groups, or being an access point for the community, for community input. In the putting it into action section of the guidebook, it says, this is the example. In school districts across the state, the best known example of a governing group is the school board. And the school board is an elected body which develops and adopts policies that align to state and federal laws. It employs and evaluates administrators. It negotiates staff contracts and provides oversight on the school district budget. Board members are elected by the taxpayers and are accountable to everybody. So I have a poll here. The next one is, which of these groups is a governing group? So if you could just weigh in on which one do you think is an example of a governing group? Okay, I'm going to leave this open a couple minutes. All right, most of you have weighed in. All right, I'm going to close it. I'm going to launch it out, and 83% of you said Wisconsin Facet Board of Directors, and then some others of you said the Task Force for Global Health. So basically, we don't know that the task force necessarily is responsible to establish bylaws and actually do all those things that it sets. But for sure, the board of directors for facets is the purpose is to govern facets and to set the policy for facets and to establish bylaws and all that. So in this case, that board of directors would be the best answer. So, all right. So the next one is the advisory group. Let me see here, advisory group. And this one is a group that's usually concerned with one issue. And membership is composed of people who are representative of a broader group of people that are affected by that issue and who have expertise in that issue. So unlike the governing board, the advisory group doesn't have either fiscal or legal responsibility. And advisory councils typically have their authority limited to giving advice or counsel to the board of an organization, the CEO or the executive director, or members of the staff who are responsible for specific programs. So examples of advisory group activities would be making recommendation, providing background for board decisions, furnishing pros and cons, listing questions that are appropriate for a given situation. So the board or agency staff would review and approve the recommendations that come from an advisory group, but it's not obligated to follow the advice. So unlike committees, advisory groups are usually composed of individuals outside of a board, although they might include maybe one or two board members as well. In putting it into action, in the guidebook, um, the example of the advisory group says a school district's special ed advisory group. It might include a parent and teacher representatives from each school in the district. The special ed director and a parent co-facilitate the group meeting. The focus of the group's work is to discuss current initiatives and just give feedback on how those initiatives are affecting students with disabilities. The group provides input on the needs of families and might help assist with coordination of activities and events for families in the school district. So I'm going to do another poll now, and we're going to do which one of these is an example of an advisory group. Okay, I think most of you have answered. Yep, okay. All right, so I'm going to share this one out, and most of you said the first one, and that one definitely is the sort of giveaway answer because it has the word advisory council in the title. And the other two would be governing group, because the fundraising committee is usually responsible for making all decisions related to fundraising, and the audit committee would have legal and fiscal decisions to make. So I'm going to hide that. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. The third group is leadership group. And so this group can provide important direction for federal lawmakers at the national level, for state lawmakers at the state level, and for district or local administrators at a local level. And membership could include any combination of family members or youth community members, policymakers, professionals. Specific roles and responsibilities of a school leadership team might vary widely from school to school or district to district. And a school leadership team is typically a group of administrators, teachers, and other staff members who make important governance decisions in a school or who lead and coordinate school improvement initiatives. So participants can volunteer for a leadership team, or they might be recruited by administrators. Parents are often and hopefully included on these leadership team groups. In recent years, leadership teams have evolved into a form of shared leadership, as we talked about earlier. So the process of expanding the number of people that are involved in making important decisions related to the organization and to the operation and academics of a school. Putting it into action, the example here is a school's RTI and PBIS leadership team is an example of a leadership group, and this group includes various staff members and parents and community members. The leadership team looks at systemic issues such as school student learning and outcomes, and in this case, the RTI PBIS leadership team would look at academic data as well as behavior data in the form of maybe in-school suspensions and office referrals. The team looks at data and creates plans to implement strategies for addressing an identified need. And so they meet on a regular basis to monitor progress and suggest necessary changes if needed. So I'm going to just do a quick poll again. And this one would be, which one do you think is an example of a leadership group? So if you could weigh in on that one. Okay, so I'm going to close this one. Oops, people are still voting. I'm sorry. Okay, share this one out. I would say city council would be elected officials. So I would say it's probably not an example of the kind of leadership group that we're talking about. But the other two groups more fit the profile of a leadership group that we just talked about. All right, so next one is the planning group, and these deal with a specific issue, and their job is to plan and carry out an activity, usually designated by a more formal group. So some of the tasks might include dealing with a specific issue, planning or carrying out an activity, a specific activity, design information and conducting training about certain topics, assessing needs and developing priorities, developing or selecting curriculum. One example of a planning team that most of us are familiar with is an IFSP, like an individual family service plan group for birth to 3, or an IEP team, an individualized education program team planning group. And you may not have thought of these two types of teams as decision-making groups or as planning groups, but they're a perfect example of a planning group. So in the putting it into action example is an example that totally pertains to an IEP. So you could take a look at that when you have a chance. Okay, so the next one is, which one do you think is an example of a planning group? Okay, you're getting there. All right, I'm going to close it out. Everybody picked conference planning committee. Okay, that's kind of a giveaway, so you're totally right on that one. Okay, so the next a group is called an evaluation group. Well, let me get over there. This group evaluates the work of others by measuring the work or achievement of, say, large organizations, publicly funded agencies, large projects. The group's tasks might include evaluating the work of others, measuring the work of the organizations, working with the stages of data like planning, collecting, organizing, analyzing, creating a plan, all that stuff that relates to data. Some examples are formal stakeholder groups, service improvement teams, and focus monitoring groups. So in the example that they have in the guidebook, it's called, in the putting into action example, says a school district implemented a new high school class schedule 1 year ago. The school board appointed a group of people to evaluate the implementation of the new schedule. The group was made of administrators, school staff, parents, and students. Some of the activities the high school schedule review group did was to survey teachers and parents and students, conduct focus groups, and review data on overall student achievement. They analyzed the results, they compiled a report, and they presented their findings to the school board for their information and to consider if there's a reason to change or modify the schedule. So, here's another poll. I know you're going to get sick of these polls, but this was, and this is pick the evaluation committee. So which ones are an example of the evaluation group? I should say evaluation group. Okay, and I'm going to close that, share it out to you, and everybody was brilliant on this one and picked the groundwater evaluation committee, which is totally right. And it's possible that the other groups listed might engage in evaluation activities, but this one is really the most closely associated with how we define an evaluation group. And then the last group is called a practice group, and a practice group provides a structure for just communication and learning and action. So members might agree to meet, just regularly to promote interagency and stakeholder connection. So, tasks that a practice group might do is to provide a structure to communicate, learn, and take action, promote interagency or stakeholder connections, and sort of an opportunity for shared work. It could be to seek and exchange information and solutions, promote the spread of best practices, continually reach out for more input and participation, to get a sense of emerging or systemic issues. And an example that they have in the book guidebook is parents live in Wilson County, and the County Community on Transition, the CCOT, meets each month during the school year, and the membership includes school staff, adult service agency staff, parents, students, and the team really learns together, shares information, discusses issues and concerns related to transitioning students with disabilities from high school to the adult world, and they share experience of best practice. They work together on creating solutions. They schedule learning opportunities for students and families and providers. Each year, the CCOT plans a student conference for high school students from all the high schools in the county. And the focus of the conference is on preparing for college and living on your own. And this is just one of the ways that the CCOT, in this case, the practice group, expands their learning community by engaging more people into the, into this work. So here's an example of pick an example of a practice group here. Okay, almost all of you have voted. Wait a second more. All right. I'm going to close that off and share it out. And everybody picked the first one, Community Practice on Transition. And, the school board is, and that's right, obviously. The school board's a governing group. The National Youth Leadership Council is probably best categorized as a leadership group. And so now we have a couple of more, resource pages. So I'm going to just shoot through these because you'll have them on your handout. So I won't spend time with them. I do love by the way, I love that one that's Strategic Planning Committee. That's only like a 4-minute thing, and it's a really good video. So where do you go from here? If you're interested in learning about personal skills, I highlighted in yellow the ones that are best for personal skills. And if you're interested in group skills, the ones highlighted in blue sort of more focus on blue skills. I hope you sign up for all of the rest of the ones. And I'm going to just finish up with a couple of quick polls. Okay, whoopsie, I forgot to get rid of that. I'm sorry. Okay, so now I have one more here, which is, do you think that you will join a decision-making group in the next maybe 6 months? So yes, no, or maybe. Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to launch that one out for you. And so, well, half of you said maybe, and over a third of you have said yes, you will. Hopefully, I can convince the no's to gradually join a group at some point. So just keep it in mind. I'm going to hide that one. Share out the next one. Whoopsie, where is it? Oh, yeah. Okay, so this one is just, do you think you might share this information with others? Like when you get the, will you let others know about the Serving on Groups website, or will you share the recording with somebody else that you know? And most of you said, yes, you will, so cool. And then the last one that I have is, do you think this workshop was high quality? So if you could just weigh in on that one, that would be great. Okay, I'm going to close that one. And okay, I think I got all the polls done now. And I only have a couple more things to say, is that your feedback is, oh, I know, here. Before we end today, I just want to give you a heads up, a little plug for this upcoming 4-part workshop. This workshop series is going to dive deeper into the Serving on Groups guidebook. I mean, it'll go further than what we talked about today. to make this resource even more relevant for your advocacy journey. And so this series is free. It's co-sponsored by Wisconsin Facets and WISPE, and it's going to take place on 4 evenings. And just, if you're interested, it starts October 12th, and each session is going to be 6 to 8. They're going to do it by Zoom, and there's still time to register. So, you can just go online, and I think it's on the Wisconsin Facets website as well. I should have put the link up here, which I apologize. And you can also call Sherry Stilla down at the bottom here she's with WISPE, and you could call her and get more information about it. So, I think it'll be a really good series. It'll be really in depth and something that you really want to check out. So, well worth the time. And then at the bottom here, I've got the SurveyMonkey link for the survey if you don't want to wait till it comes this afternoon. Otherwise, or you could, do the little QR code there and see if you can get into it. That's why I put the website, because I wasn't sure if you'd be able to get into it that way. Your feedback is really important to us, so just remember to complete the evaluation. And thanks so much for joining me today. I hope to see you for the next one on October 6th, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.